What started as a joke tweet celebrating Mr. Beast's 20 millionth sub has started to become a reality. Team Trees is, at the time of recording, at over 11 million trees promised to be planted, and the goal is to reach 20 million trees by the beginning of 2020. But why bother planting trees? And can 20 million trees really make all that much of a difference? And if we do reach that goal, what then? Welcome to Science with Steph, the show where I think way too much about the world around us and then share the best bits with you guys. So, trees. What's the big deal? Why even bother planting them? Well, trees, their bark and wood and branches, are made of carbon. All of that mass comes from carbon dioxide from the air through photosynthesis. Now, I would go and describe how photosynthesis works, but I'm not a biologist, and there are plenty of YouTubers out there that can explain how it works far better than I could, so go check them out. But essentially what happens is you get carbon dioxide and sunlight and water into the tree, which creates carbohydrates within the tree itself and oxygen out into the air. So essentially, trees breathe carbon dioxide and breathe out oxygen. Win-win, right? They're obviously not the only plants to do this. In fact, the biggest amount of photosynthesis happens from algae in the oceans. But trees are pretty massive. In the UK alone, trees cover about 13% of our land, which is the equivalent of 1 million kilotons of carbon. That's 1,000 million tons of carbon that would otherwise be in our atmosphere in the form of carbon dioxide, or CO2. Right, so you're talking about carbon emissions again, but why do they even matter, and why is it something that people even talk about? Well, you might have heard that CO2 is a greenhouse gas. What that means is that carbon dioxide is invisible to the light that we see, visible light, but traps infrared or thermal energy. And if the concentration of CO2 in the atmosphere is higher, then that traps more of that thermal energy in the atmosphere and warms it up. This is called the greenhouse effect, and broadly, it's a good thing. The reason we have a temperate, habitable climate is because of the greenhouse effect. The Earth periodically, every 100,000 years or so, goes through a carbon cycle, which we know because of trapped gas in deep, deep layers of snow and ice buried in the Antarctic. And unsurprisingly, the global average temperatures on Earth match up pretty well with the levels of carbon in our atmosphere. For the past 500,000 years or so, carbon levels have always been between 180 and 300 parts per million. This corresponds to a global deviation of temperatures of around 10 degrees centigrade, with the cooler parts corresponding to a worldwide ice age. In the past 100 years, since the Industrial Revolution, human activity has increased the concentration of CO2 in our atmosphere to 380 parts per million, which is utterly unprecedented. And as predicted, global temperatures are starting to rise too, with 18 of the 19 hottest years on record being since 2001. So what we know as scientists is climate change is real, climate change is man-made, and climate change is singly likely to be the most serious threat to life as we know it. This is where #TeamTrees comes in. It's a hugely ambitious project started by Mark Rober and Mr. Beast, Smarter Every Day, and dozens, if not hundreds of big YouTube creators all pitching in to help try and get 20 million trees planted by the end of this year. So this is really good, right? There have been dozens of studies that have shown that tree planting is the single cheapest way to reduce our carbon emissions globally. Not only that, but trees offer additional benefits such as additional cooling in cities. It also increases resilience to drought because of the nutrients and the water that they hold in their roots, and resilience to flooding because of coastal erosion on shores and stuff. So is this it? Is this our silver bullet? Are we gonna save the world? Whoa there. Steph, we're scientists. I'm cynical, Steph. Come on, let's be a bit cynical about these numbers. Cynical Steph is completely right. We are scientists first and foremost. So instead of just running off and thinking we're going to save the world here, we need to look at the data, look at it really carefully and see exactly what we're dealing with here. So firstly, we need to figure out just how many of those 20 million trees are likely to survive. We also want to figure out if where they're planted might have a better impact or greater impact on carbon emissions than other places. So then thirdly, we can then work out just how much carbon is 20 million trees likely to take out of the atmosphere. So taking very broad averages for 20 million trees over 10 years of life gives a total carbon content of 6,000 kilotons of carbon. This is a massive number. So just to kind of give you a perspective of how much that is, the annual carbon emissions for the entire country of the United Kingdom was 600,000 kilotons per year. So that's like 100 times more carbon than 20 million trees is going to reduce. And the 20 million trees was in 10 years, so it's like 1,000 times more. But it's a start. The biggest first step that anyone can do in terms of making a difference to climate change is putting your money where your mouth is. Every single dollar means one tree planted. And in fact, already there have been 250,000 people that have planted $5 or less, resulting in over 1 million trees planted overall. This is absolutely amazing. And any sort of amount, whether it's $1 or $20, makes a difference globally. But then what? You know, you can plant as many trees as you want, but if we're not going to reduce our carbon emissions, it doesn't make a difference. So what you need to do then is to make sure that the policymakers in your area know that you think that climate change is a big problem. Write to your local representative and freaking vote. We have another general election coming up in the UK, so make sure you're registered. I've put links of where to register to vote for the UK and the US in my description down below. Just click on there. All you need is your name and your address and you're registered to vote. And voting makes a difference because it's the policymakers that will ultimately decide, you know, country targets and then global targets. If we don't make our voices heard, then change won't happen. Anyway, enough ranting for me. Go donate at teamtrees.org, and I hope you enjoyed this episode of Science with Steph. If you did, I have other environmental videos. The most recent one's probably talking about plastic waste in the UK and taking a tour of Glasgow just to show the scale of the plastic problem that we have here. So if you want to watch that video, then you can click there. And otherwise, if you want to watch the video that the YouTube algorithm thinks that you enjoy best, you can click down here. Alright, I hope you enjoyed this episode and I'll see you next time. Thanks. Bye. Whoa there.